So, good evening once again. I think I pressed all the right buttons and we should be live right now. So, what are we going to do tonight? We're going to look at the accessibility of whitehouse.gov and joebiden.com. We're going to do a sort of live audit. So, people can follow, ask questions, see how I do it. Everybody does it differently, but at least you can see how I do it. And who am I? My name is Eric, Erik Kroes in Dutch. I work at ING, a large Dutch bank with about 40 million customers. And I am part of the accessibility, I should say it differently. I'm part of the design system team where I am responsible for the accessibility of whatever we build. So that's my background. I also do accessibility audits. And what I'm doing now is a live audit of these two websites, whitehouse.gov and joebiden.com. We're just going to have a quick look, see what could be improved, give you an impression of the tools that are available to me, and maybe make some use of the info I've written before. So I think we've got everything set up to have this working. Just going to double check because there are so many buttons to press always. But I think we have sound set up, we have vision, I have myself on the screen, I almost forgot about that. But you can see me. And this is the first site we're going to look at. So, first a visual impression. What really stands out is this big header image, the hero image, or what you want to call it. There's a text on it, and it's floating over the background. But you can also see there's this small black and white gradient. So apparently people are aware that there should be some contrast with the background. But I'm going to check contrast anyway, because you never know how solid they are with these things. So I'm going to get the color contrast analyzer, one of the most used tools. Foreground is white, of course. I could have seen that, but hey, you never know. And there's all kinds of colors in the background. For example, this is slightly bright. So you can see here that the contrast of the text over the image compared to the image is at a random point 4.8 to 1. And for this kind of text, I should check first. Whoa. Clicking all the wrong things. I should check what kind of text this is. I'm going to inspect it. See if this is considered small text or large text. This is font size 38. So this is large text. And when it's large text, it should be at least a contrast of 4.5. So with 3.0. So with 4.8, we're well above those values. But the interesting piece is slightly above it. There's this word that says healthcare. And what's even worse about the word is that it turns gray when I hover it. So in my inspector, I can find this element, the word healthcare. You see it light up if you're able to see it. And we can give this a state. So we can say hover. And you see it turns gray. So it's now like it's permanently hovered. As long as I keep the inspector open, of course. That helps a lot. So we're going to do it again. Find the element, select the state hover. Now it's like it's permanently hovered. So you see it's gray. And when I hover over, nothing changes about the text. So I'm going to use the color picker once again. Very carefully. And pick the gray value. They say it's about BEBDBD. But it doesn't tell us anything because RGB colors are like magic. And then we're going to pick the color of the hair of the woman. I assume it's a woman. That's close. And it says the contrast ratio is about 3.8 to 1, which is a lot lower than we had before because it's now gray instead of white. And this text is also not large. This is 13 pixels. So we have our first failure just from visual inspection is there's a contrast issue here. Not when the link is in its unhovered state, but when we hover it, it turns darker. So that's also kind of weird from a UX standpoint. Like I'm gonna go to this bit, I'm gonna point all my attention to this part. I'm not gonna say focus because that has a different meaning on websites. But all my attention is with this healthcare link, and at the point that my attention is there, the contrast is the lowest. So instead of grabbing my attention, it's actually trying to avoid my attention or something. So from a UX standpoint, that's kind of illogical. But the big text is probably okay. Then we have what interesting, yeah. Do we continue on the page or do we look up? Because the funny thing is, there's this big bar at the top, and it's really easy to miss because the image grabs your attention, and I have the intent to go further down the page. But then I look here, there's a menu which takes the entire window, and there's this image of the White House that I think leads back home. It has a title attribute. Not a big fan of the title attribute, but there's nothing against using it. Then there's these other words in the menu, and there's this weird pattern that's on the website that you've got these menu items. They have a certain color, a certain brightness, and when you hover one of them, the other ones become brighter, which means they get less contrast. So instead of emphasizing the one that you focus, the one that you look at, they de-emphasize the rest, which is quite unusual. So there are these menu items. I'm just going to click one to see what happens. If I look at the bottom left of my browser, I see it should point to economy/jobs URL. So I'm going to see if that's true. Yeah. So we open a new page, which is nice and fast, by the way. But so it opens directly. So there's no drop down or anything. It just opens a new page. I'm going to test them all now. Yeah, these are all just comparable links. And apparently these are the most important things that you want to see on the White House. Economy, national security, budget, immigration, and coronavirus.gov. And then slightly to the right, there's this search whitehouse.gov. My mouse turns into a hand, so I would expect this to be a link. And it also says in the bottom left of my browser that it should go to a search page. But there's also this icon. So there's a text, search whitehouse.gov, and an icon. And I've seen many websites where this grayish text that would then be a placeholder. And then if you click the placeholder, you would be in the search field somehow. But this one should be a link. So I don't know where it starts or ends because I can float above it, and I think it's rather big. I'm going to click it, and what happens? I get this. It's a sort of modal. Makes me really curious. And it says type your search in a really, really low contrast. I'm not even going to measure that. That has to be a contrast issue. And then when I type something, it vanishes. So there's no visual label when you're actually typing. And it's immediately focused, but we still have a menu as well. So you can open the menu, close the menu, and then I'm back on the front page. Well, that's magic. So one click, I'm on another page. No, I'm still on the same page. Okay, so then why does it give me a URL? I'm gonna inspect what this is. So it's sort of like a link, because I hover it, it shows a hand. And it shows that I'm going to URL because there's this URL in the left bottom. I can right click it and say open link in new tab, open link in new window, new private window even. If you're ashamed of visiting whitehouse.gov, you can open it in a private window. So you would expect this to be a link. There are many indications for this to be a link. But when I open it, the URL does not change. And the thing that's happened is not a way of navigating, it's showing a sort of modal. So what you would usually do with a modal is you would use a button. That's the pattern you would expect, because it's an action on the page. So you're going to show something, you're going to hide something. You don't want a modal to open in a different tab or something. So you would expect a button. So what is it? It's a link. It's a link with a URL. And there's this image in there in a B tag. No idea why they put a B tag on it, but sure. And it's an SVG. And it has a title, open search. And it's not focusable. But why then does it trigger like a button? That's really weird. So I'm just gonna do... Oh yeah, there's some comment in the chat. People argue whether you can open modals with links or buttons because focus is moved. Yeah, I don't buy that, but I've heard the argument again as well. When I have a link, I expect to be able to right-click it. I want to be able to open it in a tab or a window. I want to be able to bookmark a link. I can't bookmark a search function. I can't bookmark a modal. A modal is something that does not have its own URL. So I think a link would be the most obvious choice here. But the way that this is a link but behaves like a button is like the weirdest combination we can have, I guess. So I'm going to start NVDA. Ooh.
Voice meter.
Yes.
NVDA update and close.
That's great
Voice
to hear.
meter minus 33.4 dB minus 30.7.
Yeah, that's the other window. So I'm going to lower the volume a little bit now.
Mozilla
Busy. Refresh the page.
The White House busy. Link skip to content. Banner landmark whitehouse.gov. Navigation landmark lit.
I'm just using tab now. And the first thing I'm hitting is the top menu item. So I'm now at economy. It has this really slight focus state. Probably the Firefox default focus state. And I'm going to press tab again.
National security.
National security. Budget. Immigration. Coronavirus.gov. And then I think we're going to hit the search thing.
Search whitehouse.gov open search link.
Open search link. So everything indicates that this is a link. So I press spacebar. Spacebar is interesting because a link and a button, they both open with enter, with the return button. So that's easy. But when I press spacebar, a button should activate and a link should scroll down. Spacebar is then a page down. So I'm going to press spacebar and see what happens.
Dialog. Type your search edit.
And it opens.
Type your search. Blank.
So yeah, that's a really confusing pattern they're using. Can I press escape to close this?
Link search whitehouse.gov.
Yes. Okay.
Navigation search whitehouse.gov open search link.
Okay, so I'm going to open it again.
Dialog.
With enter this time.
Clickable close search.
So what happens when I do shift tab? It goes to a close button that says nothing. That's fits with the pattern, I guess. If one thing is bad, then it's all bad.
Open menu graphic clickable button.
Open menu graphic clickable button. Okay, then a shift tab
Link
again.
Search whitehouse.gov.
Link search whitehouse. Yeah.
Bladwidger's toolbar. Most visited buttons. The White House document. Link search whitehouse.gov.
So this is weird. So in between my browser, let's say the browser navigation and the modal, there's this link. So on one hand, I can use my screen reader to access content behind the modal.
Dialog.
Because this looks like a modal.
Search graph. Type your browser tab Latin toolbar. Tab control.
But there's only one thing I can. Oh, this.
Folder view.
I'm gonna close NVDA again for everybody's peace and calm.
Network exit NV. Okay.
So we have this sort of modal pattern, and the idea of a modal is that you're basically in a new context. So you cannot do anything with the background, but I could still access the background with my screen reader. So I'm gonna inspect. Do it old school with this pointer. So where is this at? So this says pop over content, pop over. So they have this thing. Yeah, they also think it's a modal. They say role is dialog, and they say aria modal is true. And what they do nicely, partially nicely at least, is that you have this modal that's its own child of the DOM. So it's a child of the body, which makes it really easy to isolate the rest of the website. But then there's all this stuff that's still being able to access. Okay, so they put a tab index -1 on everything that's outside the modal. So what they want to do basically is this inert pattern. I think some people in the chat might recognize this. Yeah. Yeah, very recognizable. So do we have any hidden? No, there's no area hidden. So they do keep in mind that people might navigate by keyboard, but they do not have in mind that people use a screen reader, because when you use a screen reader, you can jump from button to button or from link to link, or you can request a heading structure. That's all still possible to find right now. So this is a weird modal. This is like a semi-modal or something. And then it puts the focus here on this type your search. I'm not even, I think if you're now sitting with your tablet looking at this, or a laptop, you think, what is this guy talking about? Well, it says type your search. There's this really low contrast placeholder text that says type your search. And when I type one character, it vanishes. So this is really, really hard to navigate. The fun thing is also there's another input here to search. So like you go from search to search, and this one also has a placeholder. So you have the same contrast issue with this placeholder, and it's an input without a label. This does not make me happy, except, well, it's a great example of showing you what's happening here, but this is not how you should build it. And the funny thing is there is a label, but they have just hidden it. So I think I can just unclick some CSS and you're going to show it. So there's actually label search whitehouse.gov, but the only people that get it is people with screen readers, for example. Yeah. So on one hand, they do keep these people in mind, and on the other hand, they're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Then we've got these cards, which are also interesting because they're not entirely clickable. This white part is not clickable. Then you have the image, which is clickable. Then you have this sort of category, which is clickable as well, but leads to the category, not the article. And then again, this is also a link. So I guess you have two links. Or the first one, is the image even? I'm checking now the left bottom side of my browser just to see what happens. So I tab once from this search field, and I think I should be. I want to point at the screen. That doesn't help. You're not seeing my finger on the screen. The focus is now on this search icon, this magnifying glass that we have come to know as a search icon because people do not label it. Then I press tab again, and there's focus on economy and jobs. I press tab again, and the focus is on the title. Economy continues, blah, blah. And then it goes to the next. So I can click this with the mouse, but I cannot reach it by keyboard. So I'm going to see what they did with this image. So it's an image, yeah, with an empty alt. That's something. So they say, hey, this image is decorative. You don't need an alternative attribute for this, an alternative text, which is rather clean. But then what they do is there's a link. So the picture is inside a link, and it does have a URL. But they say it's tab index -1, which basically means you can't focus me unless you use JavaScript, and you don't do that by default. It's area hidden, so it's taken out of the accessibility API. And they say role presentation. Haha, this is an A tag, but it's not a link. Presentation. This is basically a div with a URL on it. This is really creative. That's the most important part, I guess. But it's also really weird. I mean, there are many patterns on how you can create cards with clickable links and one tab stop. I think this can confuse people. One use case that I always try to imagine is, let's say I am a customer, which is kind of hard with the White House, but let's say I'm a citizen. I'm visiting this page with my screen reader, and then I'm confused by this page, which is easy to imagine. And I call to some sort of help desk, and I say, "Hey, I'm navigating this page, and I find this article, Economy Continues." And then the person on the help desk is gonna say, "Hey, can you click the image for me? The image is a link. Can you open the article behind the image?" And when I use a screen reader, it's not possible to do this. So it feels like the visual content, the visual functionality is not the same as the one that you get with a screen reader. So this is probably technically accessible. It probably gets you through WCAG and stuff like that. But it's a really confusing pattern because you don't get the same experience that other people get. Then you get these 3 articles, then the third, it's almost impossible to see, but they stand out from the background just slightly. When I hover it, there comes this small drop shadow, and you see that it's actually white on gray instead of gray on gray or white on white. If I'm gonna find the contrast, it's probably gonna be like 1.1 or something. Yeah. So there's a contrast of 1.1 comparing these sort of cards to the background, and they get this drop shadow. So they're virtually indistinguishable. Not very useful. I would border them at least, because this is also an issue in Windows High Contrast mode. It completely ignores these drop shadows, so you probably see them even less. Even if you can see them right now, you would see them even less in high contrast, which is really, really counterintuitive. Then there's this tweet by Mike Pence. I think I can click his name and the date, but not the Twitter logo or the card or the text. So I don't know what the relevance is of this, but hey, Mike Pence said this. So then there's the history of the White House. I'm just going to check how the heading structure is. That's also something that makes me curious. So they use this BEM naming for CSS. They try to do something functional with that. And then there's this is actually the entire H2. This the entire heading says history of the White House. Okay, so that's the heading. So that's a very important heading because it's an H2. So it should be directly under the H1. And then what is this? Oh, I can click this. So I see here this red line. Can I make it larger? Yeah, I can make it larger. There's this red line and it says history. I have no idea what this is. It looks a bit like a legend or something. But legend of what? I'm scrolling up and down, bit moving the page, but I have no idea what this is. And when I hover over it, I see I can actually click it. So history, the grounds about the White House. Okay, so I'm rereading this book by Steve Krug. It's called Don't Make Me Think. I don't know how many times I've read it already, but it's really worth a read. And Don't Make Me Think talks about making things obvious. Well, I have no idea what I'm looking at. So history of the White House, history, the grounds, and about the White House. So should history not also be about the White House? And should the grounds not be included in the White House? This whole piece is history, so should the grounds not also be history as well? I have no idea where I'm going with this. I'm just going to click the grounds, see what happens. Oh, then it's about the White House building, Camp David, and Air Force One. Because I guess Air Force One is always on the grounds. At least that's what they try to say with this. Then we have nice underlined links. That's at least something. With a really low contrast. There's so much to see here. And then there's a video. Okay, I'm going back to the front page. I think my conclusion so far is that it's clearly that several front-end developers have been working on this. Some people keep in mind that there are accessibility needs, but many don't. So maybe somebody sneaks in some improvements or something, but there's no structured approach here to make this accessible for everybody. which is really strange because I suppose you could consider the White House an institution. Then you can sign up for White House updates. So is this a heading as well? Also an H2. So just as important as the history of the White House are the updates. But how important is it really? You've got this input with a placeholder. I type, it goes away. Contrast might be just okay, but not very well. And we get this send button. So email address and send, and this little form. And then you've got another White House at the bottom, an image, and a menu that's not the same as the one at the top. And it's all about jobs. I guess that's working at the White House, not how the White House is creating jobs. I'm zooming out a bit, see if there's any difference between responsive or not. No. Copyright policy, privacy policy. Then there's these icons that say nothing, but these are the logos of the social networks where apparently you can find the White House. Oh, that makes it really tempting. I'm just going to check Twitter for a second, see if they share any images. Now you're going to see that I have a DM from somebody. So I'm going to see media. Zoom in a bit. So the White House, have they shared an image? Yes, they have shared an image recently. So they have shared an image of Donald Trump standing in front of a lighthouse. And I'm going to inspect it. And what I'm curious about, does it have an alt text? No, it does not. So even though at the White House website we had this nice alt text, or at least awareness of alt text that said, hey, this image, it belongs to the article, but it tells the same story. So it's more decorative. It doesn't add anything. And we're going to give it an empty alt. The person who sent out this tweet with the lighthouse did nothing. They did nothing to the alt text, which is a shame. Then we have this one. That's one with text in there. That's even better. If there's text, it should be in the alt. And again, the alt is image. So whoever is writing the content for the Twitter is not aware of alternative text for images. So that's a really, really quick impression. I'm just going to say, I think I can split this up. So I'm going to make solid start. This is a one-pager. I now have two windows in the view. Isn't that fancy? So to the left, we still have the White House. And to the right, I have this one-pager that I've written. So this is a one-page introduction to accessibility, or just designing things for everybody. I'm not even sure if I put the word accessibility in the page. So there are 4 things that you can consider when making things. And the first is being able to navigate with a keyboard. So we already see something happening, that this menu that you see on a higher resolution at the top, it vanishes when the resolution is lower. So I'm just going to click here because I know where the focus is then. I'm going to shift tab. And then it's on the title of the big article. Shift tab again, healthcare category. Shift tab search. Shift tab image. Shift tab menu. Okay. Then we go to the big menu. I can open it, close it, open it, close it. So the focus goes to the close button. It's not illegal, but it's really weird because that's not the most important action. Does escape work? Escape works also. Then I tab. And then I can search again. And I get a different, and I go out of the search and, okay, I'm not even going to search again. We've been there. So then I do tab, and I would expect to go to the news. But the focus is sort of, oh, it's a line below news. There's this default focus state, but it's not really clearly wrapping. So what happens now? I press space. Space does nothing. So this should be then not a link, maybe a button. I press enter. Yeah. I press tab again. I go to news. So I'm back to where I was. And I get these items. So this is all tab navigation. Oh, and I tab again and I go out there. Okay, I'm seeing what I'm doing and I already get lost really easily. So tab goes in and out of things. I wonder who thought of the keyboard interaction. At least it works. You can access everything technically. And technically it's all visible because you have the default focus state from Firefox, which is nothing to write home about. It's nothing to be proud about, but hey, it's better than nothing, and it works. You didn't touch it, so you're technically accessible. It's the big goal if you want to avoid lawsuits. And then all default focus states, so nobody touched the focus. Now I think I'm in the, for email updates, send button. Now I'm at the White House. Hey, there's something between send and the White House image. And now it goes back to the bottom menu again. So now it's on live, jobs, get involved, copyright policy, privacy policy, and then at the bottom, So actually, everything is at least operable when using a keyboard. And I go Shift Tab, I come back up. Now I focus on things here. Oh, these things. Oh, they were behind the menu bar, of course. So it looks like I don't get stuck anywhere. I can go back up with Shift Tab. So that's okay. It's not blocking us, which is a win, I guess. Then with contrast, well, we already checked a few things, and hey, I'm still focused on this one. This is not enough contrast. This is not enough contrast. There's technically an exception for placeholders, but exceptions are not there to be used. They're like an escape. If you can avoid them, that's much better. So there's some contrast issues there. That's clearly the case. We've seen them in the menu with the search. This really light gray text. Press enter to search. Oh, but you can also press the button, and then I go to a search page. Oh, I shouldn't be clicking things. If I look at the front page, I'm gonna bet these are contrast issues as well. At the bottom, if you float these, they don't get a different state. So there's no clear state in these. That's also a possible issue there. So you could change the color of this, you could change the underlining, you could change, make it more bold or something, but nothing changes. I just hover and nothing changes. Yeah, the mouse cursor changes, of course, but not everybody has a mouse cursor. So on your phone, you would have an issue with this. It's not like you're gonna hover much on your phone, but still, this is really, nothing's happening. There are no states. The UX designer thought, yeah, states is gonna be too much work. We've got the United States, that should be enough. Then we've got alternatives. So that's about text alternatives, alternatives for video, alternatives for sound. Well, we don't have many images here. We see this one here, the logo, maybe. Just gonna check the logo. Close some stuff because this can be moved to the side. Then we drop this down. And then we're gonna see a lot of code. So there's an SVG in a link. And it has a title. And it says whitehouse.gov, which is not a terrible title, I guess. But the thing is, SVGs don't work in all browsers. So there's probably going to be some compatibility issues here. But they tried. They tried to give it an alternative text. And then we've got this image here. What does it do? There's also an SVG. But the link already says search whitehouse.gov. So whatever the SVG is saying is, oh yeah, open search. So that's kind of double. So whoever was aware of alt text in other places wasn't aware at that spot. So alt text is a bit of a mixed bag. Let's look at an article. Is this an article? Yeah. Are there images inside here? No images inside the article. Well, that makes it easy for them. No images, no alt text. Economy continues to rebound as unemployment rate drops. Yeah, there's a lot to rebound from. This one also has an empty alt. I think their default is to have an empty alt. What is this? Council of Economic Advisors. Can also be empty because the name is right next to it. Yeah, also empty alt. Ooh, and this is nice. They have a bar chart. So the best alternative for a bar chart is often a table. Because you want to show this data in some way that's not an image. And a table is a good way to do that. But I'm going to guess it's an empty alt. So they're going to say it's decorative. So it might be that all the information from this image is also in the text somehow. But if I would consider that a actual usable alternative, I mean, they didn't put the image there for nothing. They want to say, hey, you can see all the data in one view. This part of the website contains all the data. You see this single image. If you want to know what's up, check the image. And if there's no image, then apparently you have to read the entire page and get the data everywhere. So I guess technically it's an alternative, but for the user experience, it's pretty bad. It's also interesting that the source of this data is in the image, but it's not in the alt. So I guess you'd have to guess. I don't see it in the text quickly. So yeah, alternatives, there's some issues there. Sizing, that's actually pretty okay. Oh wow, I think I just emptied the battery of my mouse, so I can keep talking and replace the battery. I see a mention in the chat that SVG is pretty well supported. SVG is indeed pretty well supported, but the thing is, when you give an alternative text to your SVG, there are many ways to do this, and there's like no holy grail. So maybe we can even look that up. There's some really good articles on that, especially when you learn to spell. So for example, CSS Tricks has an article about accessible SVG, but I think they also use an image attribute and such. Of course, I never have the resources that I want to give you at the point that I want to give them. Maybe this one by Scott. He has been known to write some useful stuff. Just gonna scroll through this quickly. And I see something else about the text in the blog. We're gonna check that in a second. Okay, I'm not seeing it here, but the thing is with SVGs is that you can give an alternative text, but it depends on your browser and screen reader if it can pick it up easily. And I even see a Mozilla bug showing up. Is that the one? Does it open in this one? Yours even. SVG content not heard in screen readers. Look, 4 years ago, so it's really fresh. Yeah, so there's a link in the chat. 4-year-old issue. The thing is that an SVG has multiple attributes inside there. I'm just going to inspect it again to show that they've used at least once. They've used the title. So this title can function as an alternative text, but it's not always exposed. So what some people do is they use aria labeled by to reference this title. There's also the option to add a description. There are many ways, but I don't think there's one right now that captures everything. I think the most accessible option is still to use an image tag with an SVG inside. And then you can give the image a aria label, and you give it a raw image, and then it actually picks it up the way it should. But for such a great image format, because SVGs, you can do so much with them, the support for assistive technology is actually pretty bad, which is kind of depressing, because it would be so good. And then somebody in the chat also says the length of the lines in the blog article is also too long. So how long is this? I don't think there's an easy one. I'm just gonna check. There's probably somebody that made a website. Line length. Nowhere where I just can put in a line of text and see what the length is. I would have expected that somebody, I can even format my JS online. I can format my CSS online. There's a website for everything. Nothing for line length, but I can imagine, yes, these are pretty long lines. And yeah, it's a triple A requirement, so it's not required by many websites, but this is a pretty long line length. And I personally really like it when the first paragraph, where usually the most important content is, to make that slightly larger. So yeah, there's a lot to be said. I think if we look overall at the website Whitehouse, there are enough issues that if they get sued, I think they would lose the case. There are enough issues to say, hey, maybe some people try to improve things. But I don't think there was a real strategy within this website, because not everything works. Not everything is well executed, and not everything is built in such a way that you keep people with disabilities in mind. So that's kind of disappointing. But I guess that's a general remark about the White House and not just the website. So we're going to see what the competition has to offer right now. There's a website by Joe Biden, joebiden.com. I opened this afternoon, and I was already not very happy because it has this looping video. And yes, you can pause the video. Maybe you can even pause it by keyboard. Let's see if you can do that. I don't know where my focus is. Just going to select some text to see. Shift tab. Going to learn more. Donate now. Shift tab. Lost focus. Oh, now I'm at the menu. So the button does highlight. Does that pause it? Yeah. So it is possible. So that's technically okay, but it's so distracting to have this here. I mean, I'm gonna pause it. I'm just gonna keep it paused. I don't like these moving things. They're really a distraction. And there's more on this page. Like there's this small donation update thing. Oh, that's an interesting question. I wonder if the Internet Archive has a whitehouse.gov for the Obama administration, and if the accessibility is any better. It could be. I don't know. I'm not going to dive in there right now, but it would be an interesting comparison. I think you could even look at the history of whitehouse.gov and maybe see when they improve things or not. You could almost like create a timeline of accessibility. I think that would be an interesting research, but hey, I've got the whitehouse.gov and Joe Biden right now, and I've got my hands full, I guess. There's already so many things happening. So we have the video is already something that really stands out. There's also no sound with the video, by the way. It's just like an animated image to give a visual impression. And then there's this sort of ticker that updates when people have donated. Just going to see what kind of element that is. And I'm going back full screen so we can have full attention. So this ticker, it is a div, of course, with a role region and an area label donation updates. And it constantly shows new text. This is really hard to defend. I mean, if anything, it could be a ticker. It has the ID ticker, and you have a pretty good ARIA role to go with that. I'm just gonna go there. Role definitions. Is it even called ticker? No, it's feed. Scrollable list of articles where scrolling may cause articles to be added or removed. Yeah, it's not really a feed, is it then? Is there a real ticker? Timer. We're just going to see if the word feed is used more often. No. If we're going to click feed, is there a definition that we can work with? No, still a scrollable list of articles. See, the thing is, this updates, but it's purely visual. There's no It's not announced. So if I'm using a screen reader, for example, I would be browsing the website and I would get the current text, but I wouldn't get a new text when it get updated. There's no update pronounced or announced. There's basically no value in this for most people. It's also not like this only adds stress. If there is any cognitive requirements, yeah, I'm just gonna skip. There's so much to say just about this thing. I don't know where to start. Are you saying the marquee rule? There's a marquee rule. Of course, there's a marquee rule. Or the log. Yeah, I was thinking of log or marquee. A type of live region where new information is added in meaningful order and old information might disappear. So, and a marquee is a type of live region where non-essential information changes frequently as related logs. So this is non-essential information. That's pretty clear. Common uses of marquee include stock tickers and ad banners. The primary difference between a marquee and a log is that logs usually have a meaningful order or sequence of important content change. So this is clearly not a log. I mean, there's no value in these things. It just adds stress. It's trying to push you towards a donation. And the elements with the role marquee have an implicit area live value of off. And I'm really glad that it's off. Imagine that you're browsing this website and you constantly hear, Carly M from Ohio just donated $15. Bill C from Texas just donated $50. Michael A from Arizona just donated $15. I mean, the noise is visual, but only when it's on your screen. But if there's constant noise, that would not be a workable website. So the thing they could improve here is add a rule of marquee. Just gonna add it for the idea. Was it one E or double E? Always have to think with this word. So that's something they could improve, like make this an actual marquee instead of what they had, because that was completely useless. But the fact that they don't use area live, please keep it quiet. That's really good. And the fun thing is, I'm just gonna refresh the page once because you didn't see it right now. Hard refresh. Oh, I've already opened it before. Private window. Yeah. So this was when I opened it this afternoon. I don't want to have you miss this important part of the website. So the first thing that you see is a big call to donate. It's really strange. Being European, we don't have this whole donate culture. You vote or you don't, and that's about it. But this is what you get first. You're at joebiden.com and you get this sort of modal structure where you can click these things to donate. And can I tab through them? Yes, I can. With fancy animations because they add value and delight or something. I don't know what animation does here. And then there's continue to joebiden.com, which is this really easy to miss link. So they're really pushing you. And I'm just gonna see if there's anything behind this. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid the world politics part, but it's really hard. So they did pretty well. They have this, well, they gave the name section that isn't even necessary, but it's a role dialogue. It has area labeled by, donate labeled, so there's probably a title to the dialogue. It is area modal. It has a tab index so you can focus the dialogue. This is a pretty classic pattern for a dialogue. They have this wrapper that's a div with tab index -1. I have no idea. Maybe they want to be able to put the focus on there. That's possible, but then the only thing that's missing is a rolled document in between. So they actually say that the close button is continue to joebiden.com. That's nice. If this is made up like a modal, and now we come back to modals, just like on Whitehouse. If you have a modal and you want to close a modal, you stay on the same URL. It's much more logical to use a button. You have an action, you want to close something, use a button. If you're navigating to somewhere else, let's say we were now on kamalaharris.com and we would navigate to joebiden.com, then it could be a link. But then the modal should also always be there. we have this state of a page. It's not a page, it's a state. It shows a modal. So changing state does not require a link. So this is much better to be a button. You also see that they have this href with a hashtag in there. It's not necessary. Just use a button and you can do this all very naturally. So it's actually a pretty okay modal. I don't know what they did with the rest of the body. The header is there, the main content. What did they do? Oh, it's still there. It's probably all reachable. Yeah. So I'm not going to navigate this with the screen reader right now, but I'm going to assume that you can reach whatever is in the background. And I'm going to click this all hidden link. Oh, I don't even need to click it. I'm going to close the private window again, and we go back and pause again. So that's some of the stuff that we see right away. Then what they also have is this really fancy form. You see email address, you focus it, and what happens? The actual label goes up. And the content of the form field becomes email address with an asterisk. What does that say? I type and then it goes away. So this is sort of placeholder. This is a really strange pattern. I mean, you see double information, but there's also this little star. Nothing explains what the star is. Then I unfocus it. You get this tiny red edge, probably because I didn't put anything in there. Do we get the red? We don't get the red edge everywhere. Okay. So they validate the email address and they add this red edge, but they don't do it with the zip code. And the label floats up, making this duplicate placeholder. But if you already have the space for a label, why not put it there right away? Avoid the whole animation and everything. And then you add this asterisk that says nothing. And then I use the keyboard. When I put it in X, that's okay. Oh, I can put it in X. X is okay. X does not get validated as wrong. Underscore doesn't matter. As long as it's not empty, because then you get this red border. So if you have any vision issues, you're probably not going to see this border. It's tiny. I'm glad I noticed it, but it's so hard to notice. But it validates one and not the other. No, it validates the zip code because I removed it. So now the zip code gets read as well. So this is really, and you see that I'm leaning forward because it's hard for me to see as well. I've got these glasses, so I should be seeing just fine, but so when I'm focused on the field, there's this like salmon pinkish border. Then when I unfocus it, it becomes red. So we all know that you don't want your salmon to go red or something. I don't know. It's really unclear what the issue is. So I'm just going to leave this empty and I'm going to click sign up. Let's see what it does. Oh, then it says enter something in this field, but in Dutch. So there's HTML5 stuff happening. And then it says the same here. So I put X and I click the button. And then I go to another page and it says, please correct the problems marked below. And suddenly I can also put in a first name, a last name. And oh, this is also interesting. So here you have this star. And here it says denotes a required field. So email is required, zip code is required, and mobile phone is optional. But what then happens with first name and last name? They are not required and not optional. So English is not my first language, but if there is a state besides optional and required, please let me know what it is. So first name is neither optional nor required. The thing is with web designers is they can be so creative. They can make up stuff that you've never heard of before. American. Somebody in the chat says American. So the third, it's either optional, required, or American. That could be nice. It's different from everything else. But web designers can be creative. They can come up with solutions you've never thought about. Like, what does this arrow mean? Must be a valid email address with an up pointing arrow. I don't even want to hear it with a screen reader. It's probably going to be a mess. Must be a valid email address. Yeah, I thought I put in a valid email address. Is X not a valid email address? And then you've got the zip code also with this arrow. So I'm going to submit it now just to see what happens. Again. And now it just says required. Okay. So this is required and this is required and this is still up. I guess first name and last name are optional then. Submit it again with 2 X's. Enter an email address. It's such... Yeah, I'm not going to fill it in any further, but there's some considerations for the UX team here. There's weird stuff happening. Validation is always fun. People get really creative with that. What do you do with the error states? How do you show it? What messages do you give? Then we've got this paragraph of text that's center aligned, which makes it really hard to read for a lot of people. It's also tiny. So I'm just gonna go full hacker. I'm gonna select the paragraph. Well, where does it go? Oh, and something from the bottom pops up. You go wait, we'll come to you later. So there's this paragraph. And I'm just gonna say, I want it bigger. Wait. That's not how it works. I'm just gonna scale it to, sure, now we can read it. So I made it twice as big. And it says, thank you for joining our campaign to elect Joe Biden, providing your phone number. You consent to receive recurring text messages. I'm glad I didn't enter anything. Text help for info, text stop to opt out. No purchase necessary. Terms and conditions, privacy policy, links again, which are both reachable. So anytime you see small text on this page, they probably don't want you to read it. I guess that's the most important lesson. If you save payment information with ActBlue Express, your donation will go through immediately. Also some small text. All these legal obligations probably. Oh, there's so much happening here. And then we've got, oh, we're always a fan of these carousels or sliders. So you open this page, you see there are 5 items here. There's no image, nothing enticing about it. And then they expect you to click a arrow. Oh, and then we do get images somehow. And explore what else there is. Because, of course, we go to this website because we're enthusiastic and want to explore all of its content. Nobody wants to explore all the content. Then even more forms. Oh, the same issues as the last one. Also with the weird, so you can volunteer without an email address, but you do need a phone number. And then you get also text messages in tiny text. So the same weird pattern. I think they just used some library for this. You don't come up with this stuff. You say, hey, we're going to make a page, but spend half of your time creating weird form elements. Then there's another section. Also this is general web stuff, not even accessibility, but you see these illustrations. They have a lot of, they're using a lot of the same colors, lots of the same shapes, and this would be a great use case for an SVG because it's all line art. But what did they do? They made a PNG and it's not sharp. So it's either low resolution or it might even have been a JPEG before this. And the alt text is an illustrated group of diverse volunteers. So diversity is important. I guess that's why there's so many flags and colors. And just look at this. Unity is power. Climate matters. This is also an issue. You see all kinds of text here, but if you can't see the image, you don't see the text. And then there's this another element. This is also scrolling. Because everybody is going to scroll this, of course. You're going to go on this website, scroll all the things. Go down the page, another thing to scroll. Oh yeah. We love your content, Joe. Show us all the scrolly things. So we've got a great website for this. Should I use a carousel? I'm just going to put it in the chat. No. The answer is no. It's always no. Why not? Well, we just showed you. clicked a feature, and of those, 89% were the first position, 1% click for the most significant option. Nobody uses carousels. And they're really hard to make accessible. The good thing they're doing here is that they don't animate. So you've got these sliders that they're always turned on, sort of. At least we don't have that issue. But from a usability perspective, don't use carousels. Nobody likes them. And then there was this thing popping up earlier. I'm just going to show it now. If you press here, there's a bottom bar as well. I hit it. And they have this big donation bar. So let's say you're zoomed in a lot. Then this big donation bar is just going to take a big part of your screen. I'm happy that you can hide it at least. But you're always going to see this bar that says, hey, donate today. It's so terribly commercial. I don't like that. It's politics. It's not a business. And then we've got another slider, because we didn't have enough sliders yet. And this is all the things that you can buy. We're the movement that will beat Donald Trump. So everybody's going to wear a pin. And we're going to a Joe and Barrack t-shirt. They worked really hard to make those slider buttons buttony, yeah. They didn't. So you've got a Joe Biden and Barack Obama t-shirt. Because, hey, you got to get the black vote. Who is going to wear this? I know I'm going to say who's going to wear this. And within 5 minutes, I can probably find pictures of people wearing this t-shirt. But, so yeah, I'm going to inspect this. The thing that stands out already, this is typically something that should be a button. You perform an action on a page. But what happens? The mouse cursor changes. And a default button does not change the mouse cursor. A link does. And when I click it, it becomes underlined. Buttons don't underline. So I'm going to guess this is not a button. Oh, but it is. Okay. How? So it's a button with a tab index of 0. So what does a tab index 0 do? It makes a button clickable. So the button that is clickable by default now becomes clickable. Yeah, so tab index 0 does nothing. It has the roll button, which means that you apply semantics to the button of button. So you're going to say, hey, this button is actually a button. Don't forget, buttony button. That's absolutely useless. Then it has the ARIA label of previous slide, which gives a name to the button. So when you navigate it with something like a screen reader, you're going to hear, hey, previous slide. And it's not disabled. Yeah, we could see that. If you're going to set this to false and never going to set it to true, then don't set it at all. There's no use for this. So we saw this this link-like interaction, but it is actually a button. So somebody spent a lot of time making it look like a link, I guess, and adding tab index and adding a roll. So this is something we saw on the White House government website as well. People spend time on adding stuff, but there's no added value, which is a shame because that's a waste of time. If it's your job to add stuff that doesn't do anything, that's not really satisfying. But that's what they did. And I'm going to scroll through the CSS, and it says indeed cursor pointer. So because it's not very clearly standing out, it could use with some extra attention. So changing the cursor, there's some logic in it. But maybe just make the buttons more clear. I mean, they're tiny things to the side. So easy to miss. And then they have the tab index 0 and the roll is button. Yeah, not adding much. So I think we're almost at the bottom of the page. We've been amazed by many things. Oh, we get another. They still want my information. Look at that feisty Joe. Feisty Joe, let's do this together. Except without Barack Obama. He can't do it with Obama this time. He's already done it together, basically. He did the together thing. Why does he need us? And then we get these sort of big blocks. Oh, but I have to click the things in the blocks. these are underlined links, but I think the contrast is really low. I'm just gonna switch to the color contrast analyzer again. So this is a tool from the Pacello group. I'm just gonna see how these links stand out, how they don't stand out. And I control my mouse with 2 hands, so I can hopefully pinpoint the color. Yeah. Wow. So it's a medium blue on a dark blue, I guess. And the contrast is 5.5 to 1. So that's actually enough. That's enough to comply, which is probably what they want. But I find this hard to read. So if it's actually good usability, that's another question. But this is pretty good for color blindness. And then we've got all these links, and these are very interesting as well. We see a pattern that we also saw on the White House. So I focus on one link, and what happens? The other ones get darker. Oh yeah, then I get a mention in the chat that the contrast of these links might fail in a new algorithm that we get. That's, well, I don't know if we're gonna get it. I should go back a few steps. There's this algorithm in WCAG that's used to calculate the contrast. And there's been some discussion about it. I've investigated as well. It's based on this old video specification of making HD videos. It's the source of this whole computation is really weird. But now there's a person that said, hey, maybe you can do it in a different way that works better. And it might be that in the next version of WCAG, version 3, that they are going to change the way contrast is calculated. And this could be one of those typical cases where you say, hey, it looks fine when you look at the numbers, but is this actually nice to use? It looks really low contrast and hard to read. I'm going to guess that with the new ratios, the new calculation and computation, this might actually fail, because blue on blue doesn't look very good. Now I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do what we did before. So I'm going to say, hey, this accessibility link, where is it? I'm going to say hover. So I'm going to give it the hover state. So it's looking now like we hover it all the time, and I'm going to move this aside a bit. And now I'm going to measure the contrast of the other links, and we don't have the color contrast analyzer open anymore, so I'm going to open it again. So we have this dark blue background, and the other links become gray. If this doesn't fail, then it's mostly my vision. Then I'm just going to say this is going to work in a new... Yeah, so this is 4.4 to 1, which is not enough for large text. Not enough for small text, but might be for large text or normal text. It's not enough for normal text either. So we're going to have to see how it's rendered. What is the size of this text? What's the easiest way to do that? We're going to have a look at compute it. And it's going to say font size 14 pixels. Yeah, so this is definitely too small. This is not considered to be large text. And the contrast ratio is less than 4.5 to 1. Keep up with all the numbers. So this doesn't work. This is too dark. The contrast is too low, even with the current calculations. And it's really strange. Again, like I said on the White House side, you focus something, and then the rest gets dark. So it's like the whole menu is vanishing right now. You could have made this bold. You could have made this underlined. Although it would have been nice to have a heading or underline already to make clear that there are links in the first place. But this is just strange. It's like the whole menu is vanishing. Then you've got the disclaimer, thanking all the donors. A campaign made up of millions of grassroots donors and absolutely zero malarkey. Well, I think an inaccessible website qualifies as malarkey, but thanks Joe. And then we've got the same thing as we had at the White House. We've got these social media icons that are also not labeled or anything. You should just recognize and consider what they are. So you're scrolling through this entire page, you've clicked all the carousels, you've explored all the content, and you reach the bottom and you say, hey, I see that icon, that's a Twitter icon, now I'm gonna follow Joe on Twitter. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And the funny thing is, when the donation bar is up, you don't see the icons. They're hidden. So that's a quick run through of the front page. I'm just gonna put it to the side again. Did you just start playing again, Joe? The video started playing again. Please don't do that. It's already bad enough that you started in the first place. So we're gonna go through it with the things that I put in Solid Start. I'm just gonna share the URL. So Solid Start, 4 points that you can check to see if your page is accessible, if you're on the right path to contributing. So you're not gonna meet WCAG with this, but this is gonna help people. So I'm gonna press. Wait, I'm gonna press somewhere first where I know where I am. So I'm gonna press in the menu bar. And where am I? Okay, so we have a skip link. Hey, that's nice. They have a skip link, so I can skip to main content. I'm not gonna test it, but we have a skip link. That's something. I'm gonna tab again. Now I'm on the logo. Biden Harris goes to joebiden.com. Default focus state, just like the White House site. I press tab again. I can see from the left bottom of my browser that I now am on some sort of link about donating, of course. Maybe it's the donate link that we see. Tab again, then I'm on the menu. Yeah, I think this donate button does not have a focus state because I'm now on the menu. What does the menu look like? Ah, we recognize this one. And it also puts the focus on the close. Can I escape it? I cannot escape it. So it's much like the menu on the White House website. Maybe they even use the same library or something. I'm gonna press tab again. One thing I must say, by the way, is this is what people often call a hamburger menu, because somehow three horizontal lines should resemble a hamburger. I don't know how that works. I remember a time at Reddit, they even made it look like a hamburger, which is such an in-crowd joke that it works for nobody. The good thing they did here is actually add the word menu. So that's good UX. A lot of people don't know what this does, even though we have so many by now. We are all web people doing this. If you work on the web, you're used to these buttons. But a lot of people have no idea what this is. So adding the word menu is actually good practice. I'm glad that it's added. Then we press tab again. We go to the play pause button. Then we press tab again. We go somewhere I don't know. Now we're on the donate. Another learn more. Tab, 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 tab. All the donate amounts. Then tab to the form. And where do we go from there? Sign up. Also light up. Then probably link below. Yeah, another link below. So they are. Okay, where am I now? Oh, I think I'm on the carousel. Nice. Carousel. So I'm focusing things that aren't on the screen or that are not visible. So, yeah. I think the items that are in the carousel can be focused, but are not visible. So they do not have a visible focus indicator. This is pretty bad. So we got here behind the carousel, also tab, 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 tab. All these things light up. So some things have been done properly, and you can see them focused. They're just the default focus state often, but still. Here I press tab and go to the next slide, and then tab to previous slide. Also interesting. So the visual order does not align with the DOM order or something. And then I see in the chat, the carousel is focusable in Firefox because that's what Firefox does. Overflow containers get focus, but only Firefox. Yeah. Probably never tested this in Firefox. Probably not tested it in anything but their own browser. Assumptions, yes. So some things can be tabbed to, some things cannot be tabbed to. The order is not always logical. They're doing pretty good, but they're not perfect. So contrast, we already tackled this one. One of the most outstanding things was this weird border. I didn't even check contrast on all the things, but this border was really strange behavior. So we check some contrast. They are lacking in some places. Alternatives, text alternatives, what do you do with images? So they have this video here. How is it implemented in the code? That's interesting. I'm going to make it full screen. I'm going to say inspect element. It's not even going to pop up, of course. So I'm going to click next to it. Oh, wait, no, I still have it. Haha, fooled myself. It's still in the border. So what is this? It's a video element. They even call it hero video with a button. And there's no text alternative or anything. So there's a button that has area pressed, because why not? And it can show play or pause probably. Yeah, that's what it switches. But there's no text alternative. If you're using a screen reader and somebody's talking, hey, the video in the website, you have no idea what they're talking about. So pretty hard to use for a lot of people. Do we have any more images? We have this one. That's the logo at the top, inspect element. It's an SVG in an image tag with an alt Joe Biden homepage. So even though the logo says Biden and Harris, it's the Joe Biden homepage. The source is an SVG. This is a pretty good one. The only thing right now is that if you use Safari with voiceover, then you've got issues with this one. You need a raw image and ARIA label on this to recognize it as an image. It's SVG troubles, always. They can always surprise you in some way. But this is reasonable. They even have ARIA current on the link. So you see some people are trying here. Again, same story probably as the whitehouse.gov. Some people do their best and others counter all the efforts that were made. So we saw that this image also had an alt text. I'm not sure if it's really valuable, but sure, there's an alt text. I'm not gonna check these ones because they're not that interesting. Let's see what they say on the shopping items, these nicely animated. Alt Biden / Harris white t-shirt. It doesn't even mention the entire text. So what do they say then about this Biden-Harris? Yeah, Biden-Harris face mask. They're not very creative with these. Biden-Harris mug? Biden-Harris mug. Okay, so I'm not sure what's on the other side. It doesn't mention the color or anything. Then this one, buttons. Truth Over Lies series button collection. 2.25 inch Mylar button, pack of 4. Exclamation mark. So we should be aware that it's a pack of 4. Yeah, $12. I rather hope it's not one. And then we see the same logo as at the top. It also has the same link as at the top. So I would expect to have the same text. Yeah, Joe Biden homepage. So this is a bit about consistency. If you refer to the same page, it's really valuable to use the same way to refer to it. So in this case, the name is the same. And then we've got these logos. And it's a link with a span. So the image then is an icon. Is it a font? Yeah, it's a font. So there's not a real image here. It's actually a character. It's a bit of text that looks like an image. We've talked about this before. There's a lot to say about it. It's not really solid, not really robust. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Then the last thing on the list is sizing. So what's the difference? So the team at Joe Biden thought, hey, let's not do mobile first, let's do mobile only. Because they use the hamburger menu as we mentioned it. They use it in all the versions. They do some changes between the mobile version, but like there's a lot more staying than going. So we see here the video, then chip into Elect Joe and have questions. Sorry. I think that's the same thing we saw before. Yeah, here. Chip into Elect, have questions about voting. So they have the same elements, just slightly different order. You still get all the donation buttons. They're actually bigger right now. You still get this nice ticker. Lots of signups. And what was this one again? donate, you get the form, then you get the people. Was it also the same? Donate, form, people. Yeah, so they keep the same elements, and then you get another slider. You also get sliders on mobile, thank God. You don't want to miss out on all the sliders. So you get a volunteering section, also with the same image. You don't see the same width of the image, you see much less of the image, but hey, the image is there. Resizing things. Oh yeah, sorry, I resized the text, that's why it looks so weird. So I got a question in the chat, why does the text look so weird somewhere? I changed it. If I refresh it, it goes back to normal, but then the video starts again. So we've got a slider here with the shop stuff. It's all the same on the responsive version. It's pretty good. So most of the content stays in all versions. I appreciate that. There's some stuff maybe happening here in the bottom. Oh, sorry for all the fast scrolling. So you've got two menus, and then this section, and then the logo. Yeah, it's all there. So that's really good. Almost all the content that you get on the full size, you also get in the responsive version. So let's say you open this website and you start zooming in. There's not much missing. Not much is gonna vanish. I think the only thing I saw that went is this battle for the soul of the nation. This little text at the top, which is kind of weird because on one hand it's the first thing that you see, so you would say, hey, that's important, we put it there for a reason. But then again, if you make the window smaller, then it vanishes, so it's not that important. Oh, and this donate button at the top. There's one donate button that vanishes. And also interesting is I have hidden. Oh, right. So there's this bar at the bottom right. I'll scroll down first. Just all these observations. There's this bar at the bottom with donation buttons. See, it's there right now. If I scroll up, it vanishes because we get these donation buttons instead. But when you're on the mobile version, you always get this bar because you don't want to miss out on the bar. So it doesn't vanish, it doesn't come back, it's just always there. And if I open it, yeah, it's pretty comparable. Different numbers. 15, 32, 50 other. 15, 32, 50, 250 other. Okay, so if you're on a desktop, you can donate more. If you're not zoomed in, please donate more. But in general, almost everything that's on the mobile version is the same as on the desktop version. I think that's really good. A lot of web pages can take this as an example. I mean, responsive design, it's not a new concept. Mobile phones, not quite new as well. But there are so many websites doing this wrong. So good job by Joe, or the team of Joe, or the team, or the team of the team of the team. I don't know how it works. But whoever made this website, they made a good responsive version. So yeah, that's more than an hour about two websites, and that's just a first impression. I hope it helps a little bit. Are there any questions from the chat? Like, is there anything you would like to know? Anything you are curious about? I'm just flying through these websites. If there's anything, just let me know. I've already seen some questions. I tried to answer some as well. There's been some good feedback as well, and people helping each other, which I really appreciate. But if there's nothing else, I guess that's it for tonight. I'm going to put the recording up on YouTube. I've got more recordings up on YouTube. Let me share that link. I shared it today. And apparently, I don't share it enough, so I'm just going to share it again. You can find all the old recordings here. Sound is getting better and better, so recordings are getting better and better as well. And I'm going to work on getting somebody for next week. Somebody that's not me. So you get a different voice. And I want to thank you so much. Thanks for the questions. Always much appreciated. Thanks for being here. And I hope to see you again with all your questions and contributions. And see you next time. Thank you.